Hi everyone and welcome back to the fantasyfootballfix.com YouTube channel with me, Tom Campbell, for another Meet the Elite team reveal ahead of Gameweek 15. We've got Gameweek 14 already in the book, guys, and we have got Andrew Neave on the show. We're looking ahead to the festive fixtures. We've got a Chelsea and Newcastle comparison ahead of those festive fixtures. So without further ado, guys, let's get right into it. Guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Andrew as well ahead of Game Week 15. Andrew, how you doing, my friend?
Very good, Tom. Thank you. Fresh off a Christmas lunch with some friends, so a few glasses of wine down. Something to help me forget the game week. But yeah, very, very good. Thank you.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear it, and well done on embracing the festive, the festivities early. And look, guys, it is, of course, a massive swingy game week. It feels like Game Week 14, lots and lots of points from lots of highly owned players. Some of us, myself included, may have transferred out Ollie Watkins for somebody. So we'll be talking about that, I'm sure. And we are going to look ahead, as I mentioned, to some comparison statistics that we've got for both Chelsea and Newcastle assets, which will be super interesting later on in the video. Andrew, can I just ask you your season? We're looking at here on the right-hand side of our slide here, game weeks 9 through 13. It looks like it's kind of stagnated a little bit. What's been going on with your season since the last time we've spoken, mate? How would you sum it up?
Yeah, very much so. It's kind of a going nowhere slowly sort of season. It's probably hard to sum it up. I wildcarded very early, game week 5. I can't remember where I was at back then. It's probably about 2.6 mil or something, I think. And now sitting at about 1.4, somewhere around there. So it's been 9 game weeks since wild carding, and I think I've only had 3 red arrows in that time. So if you'd said to me, all right, 6 out of your next 9 game weeks are going to be green arrows, I would have said hell yes. But it's just been, they've been small. They haven't really been very inspiring, but creeping up, and we'll keep going. Except unfortunately for this week, didn't go so great this week.
Yeah, well, we'll look into Game Week 14 in a few moments, Andrew. But what would you put that difficulty down in terms of those small incremental gains that you've been talking about down to? Have we got a situation where we've converged on a template earlier than normal this season, or would you just say it's just normal natural variance?
Yeah, it's probably a combination of two, I would think. Template is definitely forming, I think, very much in midfield. I think if you haven't got one of Saka, Mbuemo, Son, Salah, and either Palmer or Gordon, then you've probably got quite a differential in there. So there's very much a template happening there. And even with the forwards, I mean, there's not many of us without Haaland and, dare I say it, Watkins, or, I suppose a lot of people, unfortunately, moving off from this week. So it's probably a combination of that. I think, without sounding too sour, injuries have really been an issue for me this season. I think that's just another part of it, unfortunately. Yeah. My last 5 I've had 1 or 2 others amongst there for a hit, but since game week 10, I've had to get rid of the Doggy, Burn, Botman, Matoma, and Eze.
Jeez, all
down to
enforced.
injuries. This is all since game week 10.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, it's just been those 1 or 2 hits I've had to take to try and do something I would have liked to have done without having to sort out that particular injured player. Just means that I'm just not really going anywhere quickly.
Yeah, I get it. It's interesting, isn't it, to hear you reflect on the kind of enforced nature of your transfers, and I guess that's where an inability to plan through no fault of your own comes in. And I guess this is what I've learned from talking to all you elite managers over the course of the last couple of seasons, is that planning is what has set you guys apart. And I guess when external factors prevent you from doing that, goodness me, it becomes an even more difficult challenge.
Yeah, no, 100%. That's what's hurt. I think I've usually have a pretty good idea of what I'm going to be doing transfer wise for the next sort of 3-4 game weeks. At the moment, I'm a bit stumped, if I'm being perfectly honest. Yes, I know what I'd kind of like to do, but the last month of football has just been about reacting and then trying to somehow do what it is you would like to do, or fit it in somehow with what it is you were going to plan on doing. So it's been tough, but part and parcel of the game, and while we enjoy it.
Indeed, and we're coming to a situation where we've got this this awesome fun time where there's game weeks all the time, and this one will be very quickly forgotten, I'm sure, and as in game week 14, and we can move on, and it's the ability to react to those and form a plan quickly, which is what we're going to talk about. But Andrew, we do want to look back onto game week 14 just quickly and see how you did. So let's take a look at Andrew's game week 14 team. So here we are then, guys. This is the points yielded in game week 14 for Andrew's team. Now, obviously, the astute among you will probably have picked up on the midfield template that was referred to, and we can see a lot of those names already in there. But I actually want to start at the defence here, Andrew. When I was looking at this before we started recording, I noticed this double up in terms of the Arsenal backline. It was in vogue. It was being talked about ahead of game week 14. Is that something which was on your mind for a long time prior to that, or is that something that's come to your thinking more recently? And are you happy with it, I guess, over the festive fixtures?
I'm more than happy with it. Yeah, I think the Arsenal defense, stats-wise, are the best team in the Premier League at the moment. They did very well for me last week. The week I think I got them both in from game week, not last week, the week before,
12.
game week 12. Mm-hmm. So they didn't get a clean sheet, the two of them, in that game week, but Saliba did get points. I think he scored in that particular game week. So since I've doubled up on them, they've actually done really, really well for me. And before the 86th minute yesterday in the game, I was sitting pretty, looking beautiful. Very, very happy with both of them in the Wolves game. So that unfortunately was a sort of all my eggs in one basket sort of situation there. It didn't come off this time. Would have been very, very different if that goal didn't go in. But I'm quite happy having them going forward. The defense this season has just been a bit uninspiring. The glaring sort of omission that I have there is a Newcastle defender. I think besides Arsenal, Tsimikas, a lot of people will have too, just because of his lovely price there and the fixtures that Liverpool got coming up. I think I'm lacking a Newcastle defender, someone I'll probably be looking at bringing in going forward, but it's just really tough with this fixture period. This festive period coming up now, the amount of games coming up, and how stretched the Newcastle team is going to be. But I mean, if you're sitting there with Trippier, very happy. Wish I had him at the moment, to be honest.
Yeah, of course. I'm going to ask you about Tsimikas now as well, Andrew. So you're right about the price point. They've obviously conceded 3 in a home game today against Fulham. He's still a great price, still picked up an offensive return in this particular game week. We know that Alisson has got an injury problem as well in goal. Do you think this is a person we can still trust to pick for fixtures over this period, bearing in mind he's a fullback versus the two centre backs that you've got there with Saliba, and Gabriel? What are your feelings on Tsimikas and Liverpool as an option here?
I'm very wary. You mentioned the word trust there. It's probably not something I have with him. I'm always going to be worried having a look at those, team sheets before each game, making sure that he's on it and that's starting 11, which is another reason why I think I'm kind of keen on getting a Newcastle player in, because there will be those games where I'd probably prefer to have one of their guys in just minutes wise. But having said that, Liverpool do have Sheffield United away, Crystal Palace away, Man United at home in the next 3. So he's not going to go anywhere in the next 2. I can't get rid of him before those fixtures.
That makes sense. I think that will reassure people as well in terms of the many of the viewers, I'm sure, who've got him already. So you'd be looking at Matty Cash then, I guess, who didn't start the game against Bournemouth, and there's been some injury doubts. He's not been in terrific point-scoring form, has he, for us as FPL managers? Are you leaning towards a particular Newcastle asset there? I know Livramento has been in exceptional form in Europe and domestically since he's come into the team after Dan Burns' injury. Is that where you're leaning?
He's been brilliant. It would be between him and Lascelles. I'll have a look at what my funds look like going forward, but I think it would be Trippier's obviously the man to go for. Liverpool's next 2 are quite tricky. I think it's Everton away and did I say Liverpool? Newcastle United's fixtures coming up are fairly tricky.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's Everton away, and then they play Spurs at home, I think it is. So not easy, but it's those fixtures between 17 and 19 where they've got it's sort of Fulham, Luton, and Forest. I think two of them being home games where, I mean, if you don't have Newcastle, then you're going to be scrambling to do so just simply because of those fantastic fixtures that they've got. Yeah, one of those two. I don't know yet which one. I think for the excitement value, I'd probably prefer to go without Lascelles. He's probably slightly more boring option there, I would say, but probably a little bit more secure in terms of the minutes. We don't know anything yet about Botman still.
No, and no one likes trusting Eddie. We talked about trust, but trusting Eddie Howe in a press conference is an exercise in complete futility, isn't it? So I wouldn't be recommending people bother with that. So yeah, interesting to get your thoughts around the Newcastle defence. Let's move forward into the midfield now. So we've talked around this kind of template that's forming, and I guess we've all converged on Cole Palmer bench today. Andrew, I was one of the people who's recently brought him in too. I'm sure many managers have done who are watching. Anything we should be worried about here? Is it somebody that you'd be saying, if Gordon's deemed fit, then it would be a sideways move that you'd encourage? What are your thoughts around Cole Palmer and I guess that fifth midfielder slot?
Yeah, if it was an injury scare and Palmer wasn't playing at
Mm-hmm.
all this particular game week, then Gordon definitely would have been someone I'd be looking at. I'm actually counting my lucky stars, to be honest, because if I'd brought him in this week and he'd got injured the same way I'd done with Eze last weekend, I'd be kind of throwing toys, to be honest. But I'm quite happy that at least it wasn't an injury. At least he's someone we don't have to look at getting rid of
Yeah.
now. Bringing him in, I brought him in earlier than I wanted to bring him in. That particular position there was meant to be Eze for the next 2 weeks. I quite like the Crystal Palace fixtures from last week, this particular game week and next game week. But unfortunately, that injury sort of forced my hand, and it was between Palmer and Gordon. I got Palmer in just because of the slightly longer term fixtures and the fact that I'm going to want Chelsea come game week 16.
Yeah, no, completely concur. And the Eze selection was something that we talked about with Tim on the show a couple of weeks ago. It was super fancied, and it's a really untimely injury, isn't it? So again, things sort of forcing your hand. Then interested to get your thoughts around Alvarez up front as well. So you've kept faith with him. Looked good today. Could have got more points than he actually picked up, of course, as well. You're going to be comfortable holding Alvarez through until the blank, Andrew? Is that the plan with him?
Do you know what? He's one of those guys who I've been happy to get rid of for a long time, but I've had so many injuries that I've never really had the opportunity to do so. And he wasn't one that I really need to prioritize getting out because he's just been ticking over. It's been a bit uninspiring. Obviously, if you went for Watkins, you're sitting about 20 points better off at the moment, but he is still, I think, the third highest scoring forward. Another assist today, and there are some good fixtures coming up for City in the next few too. So he's not someone that I want to get rid of too quickly, although I'm quite happy doing so. So I'm sort of on the fence there, and he's one of the ones I'm thinking about with regards to the Newcastle fixtures coming up. Maybe not so in the next two, but those 17, 18, and 19 when they've got the, gosh, remember again, it was Fulham, Luton, and Forest, I think, at home. I'm probably going to be wanting a bit of Newcastle attack there. So, but then again, who do you go for? There's Isak and there's Wilson, who is apparently back in training now.
It's
So
just rotten news.
Bit of a tough choice.
Yeah, for someone who just brought Isak in, the news that Callum Wilson is already... He's been a scourge to me over the years. I've brought him in at the wrong times. He always scores against West Ham. He's always causing me problems. But this show's not about me, so we'll think about that further down the stretch.
The problem with Wilson at the moment, if you have got rid this week, you can't really look at getting him back in the next two. You've kind of got to, you've made your bed, you've got to sleep in it now. He's got City and Arsenal next, so. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't mean he's not going to get points. If you still got him in your team, it's a definite hold. Sure. But would you be looking at using a transfer to get him in now? Probably not. And unless you're kind of sitting pretty with the rest of the team.
Yeah, which I'm not. So let's move on. Look, I mean, I want to take a look. It's going to be the same players, guys, as we've got on screen, but just to show you how Andrew's team is going to be shaping up for those midweek fixtures, guys, in game week 15 to make sure that you can see which fixtures each of these players have got. Okay, so we can see on screen now. So, I mean, straight away we can see it's the same personnel, but lots and lots of away fixtures. And this one, that's just how the fixtures have kind of fallen, I guess. It's always a tough challenge, I find, as an FPL manager when you see a bunch of away fixtures. Like I say, not a lot you can do then. Transfer-wise, Andrew, you're sort of alluding to it then. We've not got long until you have to make that decision. What are you thinking? Is this a roll? Is it a hold? Is it a change? What are you kind of thinking in terms of transfer plans for game week 14?
Yeah, I'd like for it to be a roll. I think the only players I can think that I would like to have a look at getting it now at the moment is Newcastle. None of those midfielders are going to move for me at the moment. Yes, Gordon obviously looking really good, but it doesn't make any sense for me to be getting a Saka, Son, Salah, or Palmer. So those guys are going nowhere. Alvarez, I do have the money in the bank to do Alvarez to an Isak. That is another Russian. Obviously, I mean, we'll have a look later on our chat what the fixtures are like coming up for Newcastle and how tough it's going to be for them with the rest period that they have in between games. So it's, if anything, there may be a defensive transfer. There is obviously the opportunity to perhaps jump on a 3.9 million Newcastle goalkeeper.
There is. Yeah, talk to me about that.
Now
What do you
that
think?
we've got an injury.
What do you think about that type of situation which has presented itself with Pope's fairly severe looking injury? Right, we've got a similar with Alisson as well, but strategic. Well, let's take those two case studies. But then, can you talk to us about sort of you as an FPL elite manager? Do you like those type of things? Do you see it as an opportunity, or do you see it as a kind of booking in a transfer? What's your feeling about that type of scenario?
I see it as an opportunity myself. I think, and it will for a lot of other managers, because a lot of people will be sitting with Turner in their side, who is very similar price, obviously, and he's lost his space. So it's him and Areola just can't keep a clean sheet at the moment himself. So why wouldn't you? Good run of fixtures. It sounds like it's a dislocated shoulder. I mean, I'm no medical expert, but it doesn't sound like something he's going to come back from very quickly. So, and especially given this time of year and the amount of games that happen and how quickly those game weeks come our way, you would assume that you've got the next 5 to 7 game weeks with him starting and not having to worry about Pope coming back. So I think it's an opportunity. And you know, which goalkeepers really have been inspiring this season? I can't really think of one that jumps out where I'm going, oh yeah, definitely want him. Newcastle's fixture run obviously coming up does look very, very good, and he is one of those guys that you can get in without the worry of fixture rotations. You mentioned Livramento earlier too. Would love to have him, exciting player, but you're always going to be worried about whether he's going to be in that first 11 come, you know, that particular game week.
I mean, I love it. It's a great shout. Hadn't thought of it. That's why you're on the show, Andrew. I mean, is now the opportunity, looking at this team, for you to potentially make that move with Flecken? You know, it's a tough away game against Brighton, who don't ever keep a clean sheet seemingly, but seem to always score. Areola's got a super tough game away at Tottenham, and you've talked about the Newcastle opportunity. I know Everton have been in good form, but it seems to be quite sort of tight games that they contest. So is now the time to look at Dubravka?
It could very well be. And I think for myself, obviously, with Areola and with Flecken, I'm quite happy getting rid of either one of those two. You know, Flecken is going to have that blank in game week 18. So I need to think about whether Areola is really the goalkeeper I want. He plays Man United, I think, that particular game week. At home, regardless of who he's playing, though, I'm not expecting West Ham to keep many clean sheets at the moment.
Never.
but even the other way around, Flecken also, I'm quite happy getting rid of him. So that may very well be one of those ones that I could do this week, just to get into that Newcastle defence without having to worry about getting rid of one of my Arsenal players or Simicast, who's got some lovely fixtures coming up too.
And particularly in this game week, right? You wouldn't be enthused about leaving Simicast out against Sheffield United, who just got smashed by Burnley, or Saliba and Gabriel, who are contesting the title. So you'd expect Arteta to be going strong in all league games in a game against Luton, right? So that's interesting. Do you think there's any kind of reservations from your perspective about potentially that scenario where you block an outfield player? Not necessarily sure that that's the case here with the Newcastle setup. It's something that other elite managers have talked about. Is that something that you're concerned about here in terms of only being able to select 3?
Yeah, it's obviously something you need to really consider. It just depends on, that is mostly, it mostly comes in when you want more than 2 attackers from a particular team. Newcastle do have a fantastic run of fixtures, but there are not many attackers that I'm looking at getting from them, really. There's Gordon, who obviously makes sense given his price. But who else are you going to go for? Isak and Wilson, they're going to steal minutes from each other. I'd be happy having either one of those two, but you're not in a rush to go out and buy them. You're not worried about the fact that you're blocking perhaps getting another one of those players in by getting a 3.9 million keeper.
I guess Trippier would be the one, right? With that, his price is restrictive, isn't it? But he does feel like a whole potential is a real prospect with him, right? But it's not a scenario for you yourself, Andrew, right now, with the team not having a Newcastle player right now. Fascinating thoughts. Who would have thought that we would get to December and Martin Dubravka would be the topic of transfer chatter ahead of game week 15, but here we are. That's the case, guys. We're going to move on. This is Andrew's team ahead of game week 15. We've got some transfer thoughts already discussed. Now we're going to take a little look at some options in terms of Chelsea and Newcastle assets that you might want to consider. Okay, so what we've got here then, guys, we've looked both in the defence and the attack, I guess, in terms of the midfield selection that we've spent some time on the video talking through for some of the Chelsea and Newcastle options that are particularly pertinent in our thoughts at the moment. So Reece James, I mean, he's been an absolute nightmare for managers this season already, Andrew, with injuries, with sendings off, with question marks over his availability, etc., but remains a great price. And when he's on the pitch, right, we know he's an exciting option. What are your thoughts around Reece James?
Reece James is in there because a lot of managers will obviously have a soft spot for him, given the great run of fixtures that Chelsea have coming up. He obviously needs to be considered. He's not someone I'm personally looking at bringing in at any time soon, to be honest with you. I think if you are looking at going from, he is an exciting option. It does look like, when he plays, there's the potential for big points there. I think we just need to tread very, very carefully with him. We need to remember how many games we've got in December and the fact that Reece is obviously very injury prone. He can't play every 48 to 72 hours like he's going to be needed to over this festive period. So bring him in if you're happy with him being benched every, third or fourth game, I'd say at least.
Yeah, I mean, collectively as a team for Chelsea as well, Andrew, defensively, I mean, they're giving up a lot of goals, aren't they, as well? If we take the actual team metric of clean sheets, it doesn't feel likely, right? Even with this upcoming fixture run, Chelsea as a defensive unit have not impressed under Pochettino yet, have they?
No, not at all. And the Chelsea players that are really under consideration for myself are attackers. I mean, Reece James obviously is someone you get in because of his attacking potential too, but his bread and butter is obviously the clean sheets. He's a defender. You want those clean sheets, and the attacking points are an added bonus for him. So it's the Chelsea attack that I'd be looking at. I think Crystal Palace. No, it's not Crystal Palace. Chelsea play. They play Brighton this weekend. They've got Man United next. I think it is away. and that's on Wednesday.
Yeah, that's
Just 3 days later, they've got Everton. 4 days later, they've got Sheffield Wednesday. 2 days after that is Newcastle in Cup game, I think it is. So, I mean, the fixtures come thick and fast for them now.
I mean, so let's talk about them as an offensive unit. This is not a show to just completely denigrate their options, but we've focused on Raheem Sterling here, 7 million at the moment, and Cole Palmer at 5.3 million. A fairly significant gap in price there, right? It's not an insignificant difference there. Do you think there's anything to say Raheem Sterling is the better pick for Cole Palmer, or is the value just too much in Cole Palmer's favour?
Yeah, I think that the value definitely swings you towards Cole Palmer. Having a look at the stats, is not too much of a difference really. Sterling is obviously further forward on the pitch, slightly more attacking player, and if you took those penalties off Palmer, it'd be a little bit different, not too much different in terms of the numbers. But I think budget-wise, Palmer is that person you would go to first. He has as much potential as Sterling to get the numbers. That great run of fixtures that they do have from game week 16, perhaps Sterling is the one that you look at being slightly different with and bringing him in alongside Palmer, I would say.
Well, it's going to be interesting.
Or at least if you... Sorry, Tom, I was going to say, at least if you're looking at jumping ahead somehow or being slightly different because you're slightly lower down the ranks and you need a little bit of a push and someone who's going to be a differential for you, someone you can take a little bit of a risk with, then I think you can't really go too wrong with Sterling. I think.
Here. And I think historically as well, he's lent himself to being a player that we associate with a pretty high ceiling as well. So people, I think, managers do tend to get attracted to that as well. I'm looking at these stats now, Andrew. Let's move to the Newcastle guys here. Look at the XGI for a defender in Kieran Trippier, 5.3. It's comparable with Sterling. It's not too far behind Cole Palmer and Gordon as well. And 7 million, it's a lot of money for a defender, of course, but he still represents a great FPL pick, right?
No, absolutely. I hate not having him. I can't believe how well owned he still is. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but it's probably close on 50%. I didn't realize so many people still owned him this week. I was doing okay yesterday, and I was checking the live updates in terms of how my rank was going, and he scored and I just plummeted. Or didn't score, sorry, the clean sheet and obviously assist for Gordon's goal. So I didn't realize it, but I'd love to have Trippier at the moment. If I had the funds, I would be going there myself.
Yeah, I mean, and it could have been worse. He clattered the bar with another exceptional free kick. So just so many avenues to points for him as well. And you've talked about them being sort of second only to Arsenal in terms of the more, I guess, collective defensive metrics that we look at as well. So just a wonderful option, guys. If you are still in the market for an expensive defender, we definitely would recommend that. Anthony Gordon, another goal for him against a pitiful Man United team on the weekend. Just 6 million. He's making a mockery of that price tag, right, Andrew?
No, he is. I think returns in every single one of his home games this season. It's doing very, very well. And I think another player that I wouldn't mind having in my team either. Those were the two players that were the difference this week. The difference between me getting a yellow and a green arrow. And green arrow, green and red arrow. So, my team wasn't bad this week. I think it was literally just Cole Palmer out of my 7 attacking players that didn't return some sort of numbers, but unfortunately Trippier and Gordon, not owning those two, absolutely decimated my rank. So it sucks not having them. I don't really have a route to getting either of them besides perhaps a Palmer to Gordon. It feels like a bit of a sideways move. I think it's 50-50 between the two of them. I think the worry, obviously, with the congestion in the fixtures is that benching potential for Gordon. But that team is so decimated by injuries at the moment. They've kind of got no choice but to play them. So it kind of works in favour. It's a difficult one because the closer we get to the end of December, are we going to be seeing fatigue come in? I don't know. but I'd be quite happy owning Gordon at the
Yeah,
moment.
of course. I mean, he's got this slight doubt. He is yellow flagged on FPL right now in terms of a very minor suspicion of a knock off the back of the Man United game. But I mean, he's a great long-term pick, isn't he? Irrespective of whether or not he misses out on any kind of minutes midweek. I mean, Cole Palmer, though, they play Man United, right, in their next league fixture, I believe. I think that's right, Chelsea. And if I have a team that's playing Man United at the moment, I'm licking my lips, right? Are you of the same mind? I mean, they looked absolutely anemic in the game against Newcastle, as well as Newcastle played. I did think Man United were there for the taking, and 1-0 was a bit of a travesty that it wasn't more.
Yeah. No, 1-0, very, very kind to Man United. Something's wrong. Something's wrong behind the scenes there. They did not look interested whatsoever. I've never seen Rashford look so blasé about things. Just absolutely no effort whatsoever. I mean, I love the guy, but good Lord, put in a little bit of effort. He just looked like he didn't want to be there.
Indeed. And as a senior player, I mean, he's being asked to play on the right, and that might be where the disgruntlement comes from, whatever. It's immaterial what the reason is, but it was clear as day that he wasn't interested. And it does feel like there's that toxicity is running through that team right now. So I would be excited if I had Chelsea attackers going into, or any team facing Man United right now. I know they're super high up in the league or high up in the league, but to me, they're a team to target. Would you go that far, Andrew? Would you say they're a team to target, or is that too far?
Yeah, I would say so. I think if you had a look at just the black and whites on paper, they've actually looked pretty decent in terms of the defensive points that they've been getting. There are clean sheets in there, and those that went on Maguire early for their kind run of fixtures up until now, they've managed to do very, very nicely. I think they had sort of Luton and Fulham and one or two other easier games in there that somehow managed to get a clean sheet against Everton last week. But if you watch the game, you'll know that it's a mystery how they managed that clean sheet, and it's a mystery how they didn't get 4 or 5 scored against them yesterday against Newcastle. So I would 100% be attacking them.
Yeah, agree. They play away at Anfield soon in the fixtures as well, guys, if you're not aware. So if they're still playing the same team in the same positions with the same manager, I would be worried as to whether or not a sort of repeat performance of the infamous 7-0 type scoreline could be threatened. I would put it in that strong terms. Speaking of the fixtures, Andrew, we've mentioned festive fixtures. We've got a little chart just to look at the absolute chaos that's coming up over the next few weeks. So, guys, let's take a look at these festive fixtures. Okay, I'm just going to give you guys a moment to let your eyes familiarise themselves with an awful lot of information on this chart here. But broadly, what we've pulled out here is a lot of the teams who are playing in Europe. We've tried to distill as much information as we can to give you a view of the kind of craziness that's going to come from Game Week 15 through Game Week 20, with the UEFA Cup also in there. We've got EFL Cup games to talk about as well, or to factor in. We've got the dates here as well, so you get an idea as to the gap between fixtures, and there's a lot going on. Andrew, is there any team that's jumping out to you here as having, quote unquote, a favourable run of fixtures of these teams? Do you like any of these particularly? Or to put it another way, do you hate any of the others that that might suffer because of the pile-up?
No, I think they're all in the same sort of boat, and it kind of the reason why we end up looking at these kind of slides is to try to figure out whether there are certain teams that we really shouldn't be going to, or ones that we should look at bringing in more players for, because the run of fixtures isn't too bad. I think every single one of those teams is going to end up having a lot of rotation, and it may very well be this particular game week coming up that we see a lot of that, just simply because it's literally 2-3 days later. Sure. I think it was, off the top of my head, those two teams at the bottom there, Newcastle and West Ham, are probably the ones that have the least favourable run in terms of how many games they're playing, in terms of the rest period between each game. because of those sort of Thursday night fixtures that they've got, cup games, that sort of thing. So I wouldn't be saying that I'd be targeting any one of those. And I think we just, as managers now during this December period, we just need to be okay with the fact that a lot of our players are not going to play 90 minutes each game week, unfortunately. So it's really, really tough to say stay away from Newcastle, because I don't think there's any other team really over this December period that is any better off.
No.
Or it was worth getting more.
Yeah, it's a great point. It's kind of like to get across to folks that a lot of these teams are going to be playing 3 games a week for the foreseeable. Obviously, there's Europe to factor in as well. And rotation's going to be a thing, right, in this period that we're all going to have to accept. And that's why I quite liked when we looked at your team earlier, Andrew, in relation to having those 2 centre-backs that you've got for Arsenal. I quite like strategically how you've done that in terms of those positions, historically at least, being, I guess, less prone to being left out during this particular period.
Yeah, no, 100%. And there are obviously certain positions, certain players within those teams that we've got up there that you would hope would be a little bit more secure. And I think it comes down to whether you're targeting players that perhaps have a like-for-like replacement that would be quite easily, brought in at any given stage. I'm quite happy that I've got Gabriel, Saliba. Obviously, Gabriel, historically this season, has trolled us a little bit in terms of the amount of time that he has spent on the bench. I think he's probably as secure as most. I say this, with a pinch of salt, I guess, just because of the position that he is playing. And I'd be more worried with the likes of perhaps, well, I would have said Zinchenko, but with the Tomiyasu injury this week, perhaps Zinchenko. I don't actually know, to be perfectly honest. Need to have a look into that a little bit more in terms of the rest of the players in that Arsenal side. But given that backline, I think Saliba and Gabriel are two to go for.
Yeah, I agree with that. The other thing that's leaping out for me on this chart is you've referred to Chelsea's good upcoming run. I think this does portray it nicely. I think that away match at Everton is difficult, right? With the kind of siege mentality that they've got after the points deduction. They're in good form anyway. An away match will be tough for Chelsea then. But then they've got this kind of nice run, not playing in Europe as well. They travel to Sheffield United. They have a home match against Sheffield United in Gameweek 17. They've got Newcastle, tough game as well, but another home fixture in the EFL. But then the Wolves game after that as well. It doesn't scare me. And then Palace, who seem to be struggling a little bit, and then Luton. So I can understand the excitement that you sort of said around Chelsea assets ahead of this festive period as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so the Chelsea from game week 16 it looks really, really good for them. I think, look, we've obviously spoken about the fact that they're playing Man United this weekend this midweek, sorry. More than happy having them in that game too. I think Everton is a little bit more tricky than we think. Everton have looked good. But after that, they've got Sheffield Wednesday, Wolves, Crystal Palace, Luton, Fulham, all up until game week 21,
Lovely.
which is mid-January or so, I think. So, but that's also when there'll be another little shuffle with regards to players that are going to be going away for the Asia Cup and AFCON. So just something else to start thinking about.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to play out, and there's lots of football to come ahead of that as well. And we're recording this on Sunday night, and we need to get through game week 15 first. Andrew, always a pleasure to talk to you. You can always make me feel better, even after when I've transferred out Ollie Watkins for Isak. So thank you very much for that.
No, I think if you got it, I'd be happy having Isak. Look, the fixtures are great. Wilson's obviously only just come back, but because of his injuries, I highly doubt Wilson's going to get a whole lot of minutes in the next week or two at least, and that's 3 game weeks right there. So yeah, holding fingers.
Good man. Anything final you wanna include before we wrap things up, Andrew?
No, not besides the fact that if you are sort of wallowing a little bit in it and not doing quite as well as you would have, this is the period where things can change really quickly. We've got I think, about 7 game weeks in the space of a month, and it's an opportunity to climb those ranks. So you don't have to worry about things too long. You got another 48 hours or so before the next game week, and you can get straight back into it.
Here. Good advice and a nice calming way to end the show. Guys, it's been a pleasure to bring this video to you ahead of Game Week 15. Enjoy those midweek fixtures. This is why we play the game. Of course, do please subscribe to fantasyfootballfix.com if you haven't already, and to the fantasyfootballfix.com YouTube channel as we push forward towards 40,000 subscribers. And do please also smash a like on the video on your way out, and leave a comment down below for Andrew if you have one. I'll be back super soon, guys, but enjoy Game Week 15. Without further ado, see you next week. Bye-bye.